All right, let's dive into Dr. Stone. We're tackling Senku Ishigami today, and we're going deep.
Deeper than a petri dish.
Exactly. We're talking beyond the sciencey surface, folks. We got character guides, wikis, even some articles like analyzing his personality and relationships.
I always find those interesting, those deep dives into fictional characters.
Yeah, it's like, what makes them tick, right?
Yeah.
What's the core of Senku?
Well, his story's a pretty wild place to start, wouldn't you say? Waking up after 3,700 years.
In a stone world, yeah, that's got to do something to a guy.
Everyone he knew turned to stone, and bam, his first thought. Rebuild civilization with science. Talk about ambition.
Not just ambition, though, right? I mean, the sources mentioned he counted every second he was petrified. Every second.
Over 136 billion of them. I can barely remember what I had for breakfast.
Seriously. But, I mean, think about it. That level of focus, that dedication.
It's incredible, really. Senku's mind, it's like a steel trap, holds on to all that scientific knowledge, even after millennia.
And that's what lets him, like, actually survive in the stone world, right? Invent all that crazy stuff.
Exactly. Tsukasa even calls him, quote, the sharpest, most intelligent man in the world.
Okay, but could that focus also be a weakness? Maybe. I mean, so set on logic, could he miss other approaches?
Insightful point. The sources do suggest that Senku's reliance on logic might sometimes make it hard for him to, fully grasp human emotions.
Right, or situations that are unpredictable, like where logic doesn't quite fit.
Precisely. It's a fascinating aspect of his character, really.
Yeah.
This paradox of the scientific mind and the complexities of being human.
So he's a genius, but not perfect. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. The sources paint this picture of Senku as, well, surprisingly complex. He can be arrogant.
Manipulative, even.
Right, but then he risks everything to save Chrome from Tsukasa's empire. It's a contradiction, but it makes him, well, more human, wouldn't you say?
Totally. Like he's got this secret soft spot under all that science.
Yeah.
And speaking of contradictions, his relationships. Here's this logic-driven guy forming these powerful bonds.
In the stone world, no less.
Yeah. Taiju, Yuzuriha, Kohaku, Chrome, even Jen, the mentalist. Like, how does that even work?
It seems Senku instinctively understands that rebuilding civilization needs more than just science. It needs loyalty, strength, creativity.
And a bit of cunning, right? With Jen, at least.
Exactly. Each person brings something unique, making them a formidable team. It's fascinating to see how Senku values those differences.
Speaking of unique, I got to mention this one detail from the sources that really stuck with me. Senku makes nitric acid, which is key for gunpowder, using bat guano.
Bat what now?
Bat droppings. I mean, talk about thinking outside the box.
That's Senku for you. Adapting to his environment, using whatever he can find. Pure ingenuity.
So we've got a complex, science-obsessed, bat guano-using character. Where does Tsukasa fit in all this? Their views clash big time, right?
Oh, absolutely. Tsukasa wants a world, free from what he sees as adult corruption. Wants to go back to a simpler way of life.
Which is the total opposite of Senku wanting to revive everyone and use science to, like, push forward.
Precisely. Their clash becomes this central theme in Dr. Stone. It forces Senku to not only innovate scientifically, but also think strategically.
It's a battle of ideals set in the Stone Age. Makes you wonder, though, is there ever a situation where starting over, like Tsukasa suggests, might actually be better?
That's a great question, and honestly, it's not an easy one to answer. While Tsukasa's methods are often brutal, his concerns about, repeating past mistakes, those are valid.
Right, like, are we doomed to repeat history? It makes you think.
It does. It forces us, and perhaps even Senku, to confront the complexity of rebuilding society.
Okay, that adds a whole new layer to their conflict. But let's shift gears a bit. I'm curious about Senku's relationship with his adoptive father, Byakuya. There's a lot of emotion tied up in that, right? Especially with Byakuya being an astronaut.
Absolutely. The discovery of Byakuya's message, the evidence of his survival, it deeply affects Senku.
He doesn't often show his emotions, does he?
Rarely. But finding those words from his father, knowing his legacy lives on, it breaks through Senku's shell, shows us his vulnerability.
And that vulnerability makes him even more relatable. He's this larger-than-life genius, but also someone who longs for connection, for family.
It's a powerful reminder that even in a world stripped bare, like the stone world, that human need for connection, it remains.
And for Senku, that connection to his father fuels his drive to rebuild a world where those bonds can thrive. That's pretty deep stuff.
It is. It speaks to the core of what makes Senku such a compelling character, I think. It's like Byakuya's message wasn't just about surviving. It was about, carrying on this torch of progress.
And Senku, he takes that seriously, doesn't he? I mean, rebuilding civilization, that's a pretty big torch to carry.
Absolutely. The sources suggest that Byakuya's message actually included, like, vital scientific knowledge, almost like instructions.
A roadmap for the stone world.
Exactly. And it leads Senku to create some incredible things. We're talking soap, glass, electricity, even a rudimentary cell phone.
I mean, that's centuries worth of discoveries condensed into, what, a few years in the stone world.
It's mind-boggling, the pace of his progress. But what I find particularly interesting is that he doesn't keep it all to himself.
Right. He teaches others, shares the knowledge, almost like he's building up this team of scientists.
It's a brilliant strategy, really. If you want to revive civilization, you can't do it alone. You need a diverse group of minds.
And Senku, he gets that. He actively seeks out people with different skills, talents, recognizes their potential.
It's like he's assembling the ultimate science team, each person playing a crucial role in this grand experiment of rebuilding society.
And it's not just about the skills, right? Senku actually takes the time to understand them, build relationships.
He fosters this sense of camaraderie, almost like a family. He understands the human element is just as important as scientific advancement.
Now, that's a leadership quality we could all learn from.
I agree. It shows that effective leadership isn't just about giving orders. It's about recognizing and valuing individual contributions.
And that goal of reviving everyone, well, it inevitably leads to those conflicts, especially with Tsukasa. Their rivalry really comes to a head, pushing Senku to use every bit of his knowledge.
It becomes a battle of ideologies, doesn't it? Forcing us to question, what kind of world do we want to rebuild?
On one hand, you have Senku, this unwavering faith in science and progress. And on the other, there's Tsukasa, longing for a world, well, cleansed of what he perceives as corruption.
It's a tough question, no easy answers.
Makes you think, if you were in that world, whose side would you be on?
It's a testament to the story's depth that it presents us with this complex moral dilemma.
Speaking of complexity, let's not forget about Senku's flaws. I mean, we've talked about his genius, his leadership skills, but he's not perfect. Remember that strength ranking Kohaku did?
Ah, yes, where he came in last. It's almost funny to imagine this brilliant scientist struggling to lift someone like Homura.
It's like the universe said, okay, you get the mega brain, but no super strength for you. But are there any other weaknesses besides the physical stuff?
There are, and they offer some insight into his character. For example, Senku's craftsmanship is pretty average.
You'd think someone who can build a battery from scratch could also handle a simple pot, right?
Exactly. It's where collaboration becomes essential. He relies on others, like Kaseki, who excel in those areas.
It's a good reminder that even geniuses need help, and admitting that strengthens their leadership.
Right. It takes a village, as they say. And Senku seems to understand that instinctively.
That's a valuable lesson, especially now when everything's about individual achievement. Sometimes it's okay to admit we need help, seek out people who complement our skills.
Precisely. And speaking of needing help, the sources mention something rather interesting. Senku's recurring bad luck.
Wait, hold on. Bad luck. Senku, the guy who revives civilization, has bad luck. You're kidding, right?
It seems so. Jen, the mentalist, even points it out. Senku ends up in these precarious situations, despite all that meticulous planning.
Maybe those moments are actually opportunities, though, to adapt, think on his feet.
That's an interesting perspective. It highlights the importance of resilience, adaptability, especially in an unpredictable world like the stone world.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground. We've seen his genius, his personality, relationships, leadership style, even his flaws. But I'm still curious about one thing. It's Senku's love for space. I mean, it pops up in the sources, this sort of hidden passion, this drive to explore.
You notice that too. It's definitely there. Remember his pet monkey, Chalk?
Yeah, named after, what was it, Alan Shepard, the astronaut?
Exactly. A small detail, but it reveals a lot about Senku's aspirations, his dreams beyond the stone world.
And it ties back to his dad, Byakuya, right? The astronaut legacy. Like Senku's destined to reach for the stars, even in a world without rockets.
Right. But here's the question. Do the sources tell us if he actually gets there? Does Senku make it to space?
Okay, now I'm really curious. Spill the beans, does he?
Well, there are some hints. The sources mention that Senku's petrification scars, they heal completely after he's revived.
Revived where? Don't leave me hanging.
Inside a rocket. Which implies, a pretty huge technological leap. Could it be that Senku actually achieves his dream?
Wait, hold on. He builds a rocket. In the stone world. That's insane.
It is. But it also makes sense when you think about it. Senku's determination, his ingenuity, his ability to rally people around a goal.
It all comes together, right? It's
Yeah.
like the combination of everything we've discussed, his intelligence, his resilience, his leadership.
Absolutely. Imagine the challenges, the resources he had to gather, the scientific breakthroughs, all to build a rocket in the Stone Age.
And what happens then? If he reaches space, what does that mean for reviving humanity? Does it change everything?
That's the question, isn't it? It opens up a whole new realm of possibilities. Access to new resources, maybe, a different perspective on the petrified Earth.
It's like he's starting a new chapter in human history before the old one's even fully restored. Pretty mind-blowing stuff.
Mind-blowing is a good word for it. It really makes you think, does space exploration become essential to rebuilding civilization? Is that part of Senku's vision?
So many questions. Okay, let's bring it back down to earth for a minute, though.
Hmm.
We've talked about Senku's strengths, weaknesses, his goals, but what is it at the core that makes him such a fantastic character?
I think it's his unwavering belief in humanity. Even when everything's gone, turned to stone, he still believes in our potential.
Yeah, he sees science as this force for good, for solving problems, not creating them. That's pretty inspiring, especially these days.
It is. He's a reminder that even in the toughest times, humans can persevere, we can adapt, we can innovate, and we can create amazing things.
He's like this beacon of hope, showing us that even when things seem impossible, there's always a way forward.
Beautifully said. And that's a message that everyone can connect with, I think. No matter who you are, where you're from, there's something about Senku's journey that resonates.
So I guess the big question is, have we cracked the code of Senku Ishigami? Reached the bottom of this deep dive?
We've definitely gained some insights, explored his personality, his motivations, his brilliance, his flaws. But like any good scientific exploration, there's always more to discover.
And that's the beauty of it, right? Keeps us curious, keeps us wanting to learn more. So, to all our listeners out there, we leave you with this. What part of Senku's story resonated with you the most? What did you learn?
Keep exploring the world of Dr. Stone. Dive deeper into the science, the characters, the challenges they face. There's always something new to discover.
And if you enjoyed this episode, like, share, and subscribe to support the channel.